Well, first of all, let me just say it's a huge honor to be here. Um, I feel a little bit like an imposter when I look at the people that have spoken before me, what they've done in their career, and of course, all the work that Jeff has done. I just want to thank the Ponsky family for including me in this celebration. I also want to thank Jackie, particularly, for being such a good friend to my wife, Karen, and for helping us kind of feel involved in American surgery through your leadership and your welcoming. So thank you so much. You know, I think a lot of people have talked before me about the importance of education and how education really is an opportunity to take what you do as an individual and to amplify it so many times. And when we talk about the surgical legacy of what Jeff Ponsky has done, and I mentioned Jeff Ponsky, not Jeff Marks, it is really to talk about image-guided surgical practice, because the goal that Jeff has always put forward is to be able to provide what surgeons want to do, that is a definitive, important, effective treatment for a person's illness in the way that creates the minimal injury. And image-guided surgery, whether it's flexible endoscopy, laparoscopy, or robotic surgery, has transformed surgical care over my career, certainly over the last 35 or 40 years. And we know that surgical treatment in this way can be safe and effective when done by the hands of skilled surgeons. And people in this audience, they're the elite. They are the top of the top. But we also have to recognize that when we publish or present this work, that other people are going to take this and practice it. And in the hands of surgeons who are not quite so skilled or so well trained, we can do harm. And that really is an important message. And I think Nat in his slides showed some examples of how progress could have stopped. It could have been stopped right at the beginning if we did not come up with a plan to prevent injury as we adopt new technologies. And this is something that we must take very much to heart. And surgical specialty societies such as SAGES have a responsibility in this profession that we practice of taking leadership by making sure that the training programs we provide prepare surgeons to do the next great thing. And we do it by teaching, but also by verifying that the surgeons who finish taking our courses truly have the knowledge, skills, and judgment required to do this on people. And there's just an example. Nat showed some other examples from newspapers. This is bad press. And we failed as a profession when we start to do things without being properly prepared to do that. If we don't take ownership of it, governments and other people are going to take ownership of that. And that is a failure of the privilege that we have as professionals to police ourselves. And when you look at Dr. Ponsky and you ask, as someone did, of course, what's the driving force behind your continual focus on innovation? It's making patients' lives better. And doing that, he said, by eliminating surgical operations, or at least making surgical operations such that they are not associated with the damage or injury of traditional surgery. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is being around during SAGE's adoption of a truly new educational paradigm we called the Fundamentals Program, first as it applied to laparoscopic surgery, subsequently to flexible endoscopy, and then to the use of surgical energy. And the goal of that, it's like verbatim from Jeff Ponsky's mouth, is to improve the quality of care that we give to our patients, whether it's doing laparoscopic surgery, flexible endoscopy, or using energy. And how do we do it? By setting standards that we expect our trainees to be able to meet. And we do that like you learn to write poetry. First, you'll learn the alphabet, then you'll develop a vocabulary, and then you write the poetry. You start with fundamentals. And we build into that a way of assessing performance as people go along in an objective, quantifiable way. It's a little like a golf score, Barry. A golf score doesn't lie, unless you cheat, of course. It's nice to have an objective measure of what you do, not someone to say, you're not a very good golfer or you're not a very good surgeon. It becomes personal then. And I think one of the things that the fundamentals program has brought in is an objective, validated, reliable way of measuring performance that people can agree upon. So what is the FLS program? I think all of you probably know. It's a combination of a didactic program given with both multimedia and text, usually web-based, as well as a hands-on way of training people in the manual skills, the building blocks required to do laparoscopic surgery. And then this is supplemented with a two-part test, a multiple choice question test for knowledge, and a simulator-based test for technical skills. And this is just one data slide, probably the only one that I'm going to show, but this is a study that I think was maybe not so well appreciated and maybe not as powerful as it could have been. But what we decided to do was to take a group of our junior residents and assess their performance in the fundamentals of laparoscopic surgery in the simulator as well as in the operating room using a global rating scale that was developed by Melina Vassiliou and colleagues. And then randomize them to either simulator practice until a certain proficiency level was met, or traditional training in the operating room with graded responsibility. At the end, we tested both groups in the simulator and in the operating room. And of course, the simulator trained people did better in the simulator. That's a given. But the thing that really surprised and impressed us was that in the 7.5 hours on the average that it took a trainee, a PGY1 or a PGY2, pretty much novice trainee, to get them up to the proficiency level that we set for them, they improved their performance in the operating room at the equivalence of going from a first-year resident to a third-year resident. Think about that, and think about the return on investment. And I think these type of studies are going to be very important in convincing educational institutions and other people that control resources to invest in the type of training that is done in other high-stakes areas and in elite performance. Surgery is an elite performance field, and we have to learn from other elite performance fields. You have to learn to practice, measure what you do, look at what you do, and never take status quo and accept it. No athlete would be content with just staying at a certain level. We have to aspire to elite performance. We were delighted when the American board had the courage, and I remember Jeff was the chair of the board, invited me to one of the retreats in Sarasota. We presented some of our data, and I remember also trying to present this to the regents of the college where I got kicked out of the room. The attitude was a little bit different. But ultimately, the board had the courage to mandate a simulator-based test of performance as a criterion to certification of surgeons. And that was huge. And ultimately, the obstetricians and gynecologists followed suit. We learned from FLS that there's a great demand for well-designed educational programs to teach fundamental skills, and that you can take a novice and bring them up to a pre-trained novice to a level of performance better than the base that they start at before they start to work on patients. And you could do that in a simulator as cheap and primitive as the FLS simulator was when we first developed it. The other really interesting thing is that the skills learned in simulation training can be transferable to the operating room. We believe it in aviation. We have to believe it. We as the leaders have to really take ownership of this belief that there is a role for simulation training and that it means something in the operating room. And we can measure performance, and we have to measure performance, and we have to do it in a way that is acceptable to people, that's reliable and valid. What about the flexible scope? I don't know if you have seen this book, but it's basically a sociological analysis of why surgeons gave up flexible endoscopy to gastroenterologists. It is a riveting read, and I don't read a lot of sociology books, but Jeff Ponsky says if you don't do endoscopy, the gastroenterologists are going to eat your lunch. Now, there is no such thing as a free lunch. So if we want to get our lunch, we got to take ownership of it, and we have to be leaders in this field. And we have to do it with the right values. And the right values are the values that were brought out in some of the earlier talks. We cannot accept that we will have the privilege of doing endoscopy on our patients if we don't do it as well as our competition. We have to do it as well as the gastroenterologist. And the way you win that argument is not by yelling louder. It's by providing evidence that you're well trained, you have a rigorous training program, that you assess performance, and that you can translate the assessment of performance to real meaningful things, to data, outcomes that are acceptable to everybody. And I think that's the way that we get there. And the SAGES FES program was a step forward, as was the curriculum that was led by Brian Duncan. So again, the board took the strong initiative of incorporating the requirement for flexible endoscopy training, the curriculum, and an assessment as a requirement for certification. There's lots of ways of getting there. This is just one of the simulators that could be out there. People could be quite imaginative in the technology that they use to train people in flexible endoscopy. I think that we're much more data-driven now, and I think it proves to us that we need to assess the value of each of these simulations. And there's a lot of supporting data now that is coming out that really looks at the importance and the value of flexible endoscopy simulation. The final step in the fundamentals program was the fundamental use of surgical energy. Again, we looked at a thing there was a need. Fires in the operating room, energy-related complications. A solution came through a really well-designed curriculum around the fundamental use of surgical energy. It hasn't taken off to the same extent as the other fundamentals programs, despite the fact that in my mind it's probably the best of all three. And perhaps we will need to advocate for its requirement again at some level, either for certification or privileges. But it is really a sound educational program, and I'm really proud of the organization SAGES that developed it. So what's next in image-guided surgery? I think we all believe as surgeons and as any elite performers that the technical aspects of what we do matter. And the beauty of image-guided surgery is we could easily record it. And now we have the technology using computer vision, artificial intelligence, to provide a user-friendly way of both capturing images in the operating room and analyzing it and generating data that really can inform us and the way we teach it. And this, I think, will be the next really transformative step in surgical education. And so I believe as surgical leaders, we need to think about how we can harness this potential to improve the quality and safety of the way we provide care. And SAGES, again, has taken a leadership through their video-based assessment program, which is really something we want to start at the stage of residency, but carry through the lifetime of a surgeon's career. And again, with the goal of improving patient care. So if you believe in the link between what we do technically, whether it's in using surgical instruments, flexible endoscopy instruments, and the way patients have their outcomes, then again, we need to take ownership of this space. We need to drive the technology. We have to make sure the technology meets our needs, and then we have to use it in an effective way. So just to end, I just want to say that again, it's a huge honor to be here. I look around the audience, and it's like the Hall of Fame of GI surgery. And Jeff, you have boldly led the surgical community in adopting endoscopic surgery, but image-guided surgery as a whole, with the proper goal. And that's not to carve out a niche for yourself so that you could build your reputation, but it's truly rooted in your desire to improve the quality and safety of what we do and minimizing the harm and injury of traditional open surgery. And I think all of us here who have been his students, whether you've trained with him, listened to him speak, been more passively feel the radiation of his energy and enthusiasm, we want to thank you for your legacy and the way you have helped us change the paradigm of surgical education. And finally, I just want to tip my hat to you, or say chapeau, and just thank you and your family for all that you've done and the role modeling that you've done for all of us. It's been a privilege. Thank you.